I want to turn my focus now to a very important question that has been raised once again. The Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, gave an interview to the Economic Times that was published this morning, and one of those quotes from that interview is a very, very important one, because he spoke once again of the possibility of India reaching the $5 trillion economy mark by 2024. Now, you will remember $5 trillion was the mantra till say the end of last year, early this year, but COVID-19 has changed all of that. Most countries in the world, including India, in terms of their economy, in terms of their GDP, are now contracting and are expected to contract this year. It's a situation of survival and recession rather than aiming for a large growth. So where is this optimism coming from? Is it justified? And can we really think about being a $5 trillion economy by 2024 despite the COVID-19 pandemic? Now, to speak on this, I am joined today by Sangita Reddy, who is the Joint MD of Apollo Hospitals and of course FICCI President. R. Gopalan, former Secretary DEA and former Finance Secretary, joins us on the show. And I'm also speaking this evening with Saugata Bhattacharya, Chief Economist of Axis Bank. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us. Ms. Reddy, let me get your take first on the proposition that we're talking about. $5 trillion by 2024. It's a catchy slogan. It's an exciting thought. Are we being overly optimistic to talk about it right now, with one good month of September behind us, and that too relatively good month of September post the COVID-19 pandemic?
So Tamanna, I think it's a great question, very important for us to talk about it, and beyond talking about it, find ways to make it happen. I think we must recognize the inherent economic strength and the resilience of the country itself. The macroeconomic positive policies which the government has put in, the initial signs of recovery, clearly what you've said, are happening. But I feel there are a few very important reasons why we can still remain hopeful. Number one, I would say, I think the agri sector, which has really performed well despite this difficult period, and the fact that the policy which has come in now to connect the farmer directly with the market, and the export focus on that. So you'll get about $60 billion by 2023, 22-23 out of that, and about 30% of the realization or the enhancement in the farmer income is going to come from price realization alone. And there are lots of other levers in terms of productivity, etc. Second is this tremendous focus on manufacturing, which I think is very powerful. We must do. It's Industry 4.0, it's manufacturing clusters, it's specialized focus on everything from toys to air conditions to electronic goods, and the underlying theme of Atmanirbhar. So I believe that we will see manufacturing moving up from its current 17% to 20% of GDP. In addition to that, you take the digital push, the services capability, the export, the inherent strength of the working class in India. All these combined with a lot of the factors, whether it's MSME, our startup, the potential for really digital, a pervasive digital push for which the foundations have all been laid, that itself could add an additional $1 trillion to the economy. I think there's another, silent movement happening of a sectorial focus, and 27, identified sectors coming into play. I also think that we should, bank on the power of our domestic market, because we are, the third largest consuming market in the world. And that, with the retail, the enhanced expectation and the consumerism, I think there was a recent BCG report. So if you put all these positive factors together, I think 1.4 billion people can create a $5 trillion economy, whether it's by the year 24 or 25. That is, a matter of execution, our collective will, and the ability to see all other factors coming together. It's not easy, but I believe it's definitely possible.
So, a lot of economists I speak to, and one of them, notably Ratan Roy, in my last interview with him, said that he sees another 3 years till we start growing in single double digits when compared to 2019 levels. R. Gopalan, let me come to you on how you think that can change, because at that rate, the $5 trillion dream is going to take much longer. I mean, everyone agrees that $5 trillion is a matter of when and not if for India. It's a large economy. It's going to continue to grow. How far back do you think the COVID blip has taken us?
Well, first of all, COVID, we have got the second season coming up with which may entail some supply disruptions, which will also mean that some slowdown in the economy. Hope we are not able to get the second wave into this country. We are able to manage it. For some reason, it doesn't happen. So that will be a good thing to have. Good thing. Mr. Roy has his own models of saying as to why the growth is going to catch up with the current one sometime after about a couple of years. And after that, we'll have to do a solid growth or very high kind of a growth to reach those numbers. So if we go by him, obviously there is going to be some time more to be taking to achieve this $5 trillion. But even otherwise, I mean, if you look some hard arithmetic from what we are looking at, probably we need growth of a very, very high levels for the next about 4 or 5 years to reach that number. And that kind of growth we have not been able to observe so far. But it's possible that we will be in a position to reach to some extent at some levels, provided so many things, as Ms. Reddy said, are going to happen. They are going to be executed with great, efficiency. Then we are able to get into the manufacturing sector, attack it in a big way, because the value added there is much less, and about 18% to 20%. We need to see how we can increase the value added there so that we are able to get more share, labor share in the in the value added. Then we have to get the skills and making the employability of persons, how we are going to dramatically lift it, how we are going to do innovation in a very, very serious way, how infrastructure is going to be built and ease of doing business is going to be brought into focus. A large number of items are waiting to be, head on, meet with head on. So the determination with which we are able to handle that, the kind of cooperation we get from public to in a focused manner from all parties, all political parties, and every person from all walks of life. If we stay focused, obviously we'll be in a position to achieve that number, but may not be by the year 2024, maybe a couple of years later, but it requires a lot of hard work.
Sure. Let's get a little more specific. I wish it was as simple as determination and hard work, sir, with all due respect. Saugata, let me come to you with an example. Doing the rounds everywhere over the last couple of days is a speech by Union Minister Nitin Gadkari to the officials of NHAI on the inauguration of a project, and he is berating them on why it took 9 years to put this project in place. He talks about how several meetings have taken place and officials who just don't move need to be dealt with accordingly. Now, this is a very senior minister with a proven track record in a government with absolute power, trying to deal essentially with bureaucrats. And they're having trouble pushing projects when there's no reasonable reason. There's no reason why it should not happen. And those are the kind of bottlenecks we need to look at, don't you think?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, so to get the initial arithmetic out, even before the COVID crisis, the $5 trillion economy was an aspirational target, which is we need to aspire to something. I mean, if we do not have goals, we will not be able to figure out what are the things that we need to do. So one of the key focuses, of course, I mean, as Mr. Gopalan and Dr. Reddy talked about, I mean, we need to build a lot of infrastructure, I mean, to be able to compete effectively, I mean, increase our productivity, etc. But together with this, I mean, there's a lot of soft skills that need to be built up, a lot of capacities, not just in bureaucracy, but particularly in terms of the relations between the center and the states. I think that will become a very, very key issue now. Because remember, all the reforms, well, I mean, a significant amount of the reforms that are needed now, hard reforms, soft reforms, are in the domain of the states now. Much of what the center could have done has been done, and now the center is essentially more of an enabling institution rather than the implementing institution. So to be able to increase implementation, the exact thing that you're talking about in terms of the execution and implementation capacity is now resident in the states. And the center and the states need to work together. I mean, this is not going to be possible. The kind of effort, the kind of investment, the kind of risks which will need to be mitigated to attract the foreign capital. And foreign capital we need. And remember, in this current global environment, there is no better time than ever with this flood of foreign capital that now exists at zero interest rates to be able to attract that capital into something into building capacity and infrastructure in India. And for this, the levels of risk that needs to be mitigated will have to come in from deep coordination. So, I mean, a part of the large capacities that I'm talking about is this mechanism for center-state coordination. Center-state, the exact fiscal federalism, the federalism that we need to build in place, I think, to my mind, is the key part to be able to attract this capital.
Tamanna, I would actually like to, just briefly completely
Reddy,
agree. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes,
No,
go ahead.
I said I wanted to agree completely with Mr. Saugata about the need for a federalism 3.0, that ability for center and states to work together. And I think it's been estimated that about 60% of the work is really related to states picking up central policies or executing on them. So this is critical. Infrastructure is definitely critical. And I think the ability to execute in a time-bound manner like you raised. But I also want to reiterate one important thing, which also was briefly mentioned, is the aspect of soft infrastructure. So schools, education, rebuilding district high courts, this type of soft productivity, which will ultimately, I think we need to shift our focus. It's not the fiscal deficit, but the quality of the spending and the quality of the deficit. Because if we're building up capability and strength, this will give returns for the country. And here lies, the aspect of another important element of the focus. Only 25% of Indian highways are 4-lane highways. Just implementing and getting those projects into gear while we're parallelly doing the digital push, and many things will evolve. So I think we have all the elements there. It's ours to collectively orchestrate.
Dr. Reddy, let me come in with a question that I wanted to ask you. And one factor that we're not really talking about, obviously on the theory level, India is the kind of economy that is going to keep growing. We have the capacities, we have, the kind of base from which to get that high growth. But we can't forget that we're in the middle of COVID. How important will it be to see how we keep a check on COVID-19? Major countries across the world right now, the US, parts of it, Europe, are seeing a second wave and a fresh set of lockdowns as a circuit breaker in Germany, in fact. How important is it that we don't get to that stage here so that this plan doesn't get completely derailed again? Dr. Reddy.
So undoubtedly, it's very critical that we must retain, the positive kind of thing, that the numbers are going down. But I want to reiterate the fact that, today a very senior bureaucrat asked me that, is this going to incapacitate us all over again? And I really want to reiterate the fact that I think the healthcare system, both government and private, has geared up. The public is a lot more aware. The capability of testing has been grown to a tremendous level. So a lot of the infrastructure is ready. Hopefully the cases will not go up, but even if they do go up 5, 10, 15%, the healthcare system can handle it. So I would continue to say that our communication, as was rightly done by the Prime Minister, is to urge continued caution while doing this unlock and trying to bring a normalcy in the new normal, which is a cliche but very true. And the fact of, the mask, the social distancing, the sanitizing, these three simple principles continue to be communicated. And I'm actually fairly confident that healthcare has stepped up and we can handle this problem.
Okay, Saugata, let me get a take from you on where we need to focus, and especially the resurgence that we're seeing in rural India. The companies that we speak to, at least in the consumer space, keep talking about this increase in demand for the last couple of months coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, from rural India, from agrarian communities. How can this be built upon now?
That's a very simple question. I'm not an agri expert. I'm not a rural expert. But inherently, we have talked about this before, that unless India steps up on the agri space, there is no 5 trillion economy happening. So, we need to increase infrastructure, productivity, facilities in agriculture. And the reforms now that we have seen on agricultural reforms, the choices, etc. That some of these the restrictions that were used to be there. I think the entire value chain of agriculture. Right from food processing, food processing at the farm gate, the farm logistics, refrigeration chains, ability to move food, process food, etc. I think that itself is a huge investment opportunity. And remember, we have been talking about this, that we need to get the labor out of core agricultural areas, because all the problems with land fragmentation, etc. So to be able to mechanize agriculture, which will necessarily involve a displacement of labor, and to be able to reskill this labor into a whole category of productivity enhancing activities, and these remember will also smoothen the price volatility that we see very, very frequently in agriculture. So I think that itself is a huge opportunity. To boost agricultural output and the potential for export for many of these, and that's a key part. During the COVID times, we have seen agricultural food processing exports actually having gone up. So I think the entire agri value chain and moving not just from the rural but to these smaller cities into this is essentially the optimal way for India to develop, not crowding the metros, the large cities, etc., but to be able to generate sustainable livelihoods in the smaller tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, 5 cities that surround the rural economy.
Absolutely. And as we speak about going to a $5 trillion economy and the economy recovering, I just might add that we must not forget crucial aspects like cleaner air, better environment, health for all. And in this, regard, I just want to tell our viewers about a very crucial ordinance that has been brought in by the government to control pollution, especially in the Delhi NCR region. It involves setting up of a commission, and those who flout the rules of this commission will have to face 5 years of imprisonment or up to 1 crore rupees in fines. We'll have to see the details of how this all actually pans out and whether it's workable or not. But the focus on aspects like pollution control are as crucial when we're talking about a $5 trillion economy. On that note, I want to thank all of you for joining us on this show this evening. We'll take a very quick break. India Revival Mission on the other side.